For Christmas this year, I'm making a number of kitchen bread knives with laminated wood handles. I obtained these knife blade blanks from USA Knife Maker online. The blades are about 8 inches long and have about a 4.5 inch long handle. The blades have been all heat treated, they're quite sharp, and all that needs to be done is add the knife handles. The production of these laminated knife handles begins with cutting thin slices of wood on the Accu-Slice system, and these are woods of various colors and contrasts and different thicknesses, and these are glued up to make a board. A board can be a large laminated board such as this, which I'll later cut at an angle to give me some unique patterns, or it could be, a simple system such as this, which is just a number of layers, probably about 12 layers glued together, and this will become the scale for a knife handle. And in some cases I'll have a 3-layer system such as this, which will just be used as a liner underneath a solid piece of wood such as this piece of zebra wood. And that gives you just a liner to be against the knife handle to give you a contrast. And I have a number of these thin pieces of wood. In this case I have dark, white, dark. Here's a case where I have white, dark, white, depending on the solid scale I'm using on the board. I'll decide which of these I'm going to use. These are some of the scales that I'll be finishing. This is a piece of paduk with, again, a layer of maple, walnut, maple as a liner. Here's another sample of a piece of zebra wood, which looks like maple, walnut, maple. Here's a piece of olive wood, a real nice grain in olive wood, and I have a walnut, maple walnut liner for that one. These will be a simple knife handle with about 10 or 11 layers in there. It'll just give different contrasts as I shade it and shape it. For these knife handles, what I did is I created a thicker laminate board such as this, and then I slice it at a 20-degree angle. When I slice this at a 20-degree angle like this, you get patterns on like this. And this makes you a very unique knife handle. So I'm making a couple of those knife handles also. So in this video I'm not going to show the slicing of these thin boards. That's been shown in previous videos, as well as gluing them up. I've also shown that in previous videos. So I just began with the putting together my knife handles and then gluing them to my knife blades and then contour them to finish the knife. Here's a couple of knives I've been working on. This is one that's finished with that angled laminate board. Gives a very nice knife blade handle. Here's a couple others in process. Here's that piece of zebra wood with a liner against the knife blade. Again, this has not been contoured yet, it's just a rough blank ready to be shaped. Here's one of the angled laminated boards. And again, that needs to be shaped and you get some unique patterns when you shape that. And this case is that simple multi-layered laminate board. And as I contour that, those different layers will give some very unique patterns and shapes to the handle. And I have a bunch more blanks here. This is the blank. I taped the blades up. These are all ready to go. So the blade's been taped so I don't get cut because these blades are quite sharp. And then I'll attach these handles and I'll show the process of doing that. This is very similar to what was done in a previous video, which I did some hunting knives and some other kitchen knives. But in this case I'm doing about a dozen of these bread knives, again for Christmas. This is my first knife handle, and it consists of 15 layers of wood, of again varying contrast and colors. I've made 2 of these handles. They're about a little over 1/4 inch thick, and make sure they match up. And the first step is to push the blade right against the end, make sure it's nice and tight, draw an outline, and then I'll cut this on the scroll saw. So that's the one, then reverse it over and do the other side. So next I'll take those to the scroll saw and cut them out. Okay, I'm ready to start cutting out my scales on my scroll saw. And I'll be cutting outside the line by maybe 1/8 of an inch because I can always take more off as I'm sanding. Okay, the next step is to put some double-sided tape on one side, actually this side, and position my blade exactly where I want it, and then drill a hole for the pin that's going to hold it in place. I'm going to push this tight against the hilt on the blade so it's nice and straight. Push it down, hold it in place, and then I'll drill the first hole. Okay, now I have this scale taped to my knife handle. It won't move as I'm drilling it. Now I could put a piece of tape on here to keep it from splintering out, but what I found, as long as I have a clean piece of wood underneath, I don't need to use the tape. So I can just align it and drill straight through. And that's nice and clean. Now I'll tape the second piece of wood on here and then go and drill through both pieces of wood. Okay, I have my two handles. So I'm going to go right through the existing hole to drill through the other side, making sure I have clean wood underneath. Okay, I'm ready to start gluing my handles on, so let me remove this and get rid of the double-sided tape. And once again, I'm using the G-Flex glue, which is an epoxy-based glue. I just put 2 beads. These are mixed 1 to 1, so I just try and get 2 beads of exactly the same size and length. It's important to mix the epoxy thoroughly before putting it on the handle, and then put the epoxy on all parts, the blade, the wood pieces, and even fill any excess epoxy in the holes in the metal of the blade. Insert the metal pin into the hole, again making sure there's epoxy on the pin and in the holes, and then finally apply some C-clamps to clamp the assembly together, and then allow it to dry overnight. So once again, here I have a laminated board. It's about 2 inches wide, about 30 or 40 layers of laminated woods in there. And I'm using this on my Accu-Sled with my special carriage I made for it, so I can cut these in an angle to give me angled pieces. And I have the angle set to about 20 degrees. This is my first cut to give me a 20-degree angled surface. All subsequent slices will be parallel to this surface. I moved this in 350 thousandths, so a little over 1/4 inch wide on my board. So this first angled scale will be just over 1/4 inch thick by 5 inches long. Next, I loosen the clamps and slide the board forward to give me a second scale the same thickness as the first scale sliced. I slice the second scale and repeat the process until no additional scales can be sliced from the laminated board. Next time we make a number of laminated knife handles that cut at an angle. And I did show how I made this laminate board, and then I cut them at an angle on the Accu-Slice system using the sled to get these scales, to bring up the end grain of the wood here. I'm going to be doing a number of different things. In this first one I already made, all these angles go straight to the bottom. And this is a blank showing the same thing. But I'm doing a couple other ideas here, and I'm going to be using some liners. So in this case I have my laminate board cut at an angle, but then I put a 3-layer, in this case it's maple, red heart and maple liner against the blade. So I give you a little bit different for that one. And that's done by after I cut my scales like this, I have my laminate board, which is 3 layers, maple, in this case walnut and maple, and I'll just glue that onto there like that, and that's how I get these pieces. And again, that's the same idea. Once you get these things, you trace out the outline of your blade, and again cut it on the scroll saw. Follow the same procedures as was done previously for the 15-layer laminated scale. First of all, cutting out the scales on the scroll saw. Then tape the scales to the knife blade handle and drill the holes for the pins. Finally, glue the scales to the knife blade handle. Follow the same procedures for the remaining scales and knife blades. I have 9 handles here already for finishing. I have these scales all glued up and pinned to each of the handles. And again, these are all different styles and shapes of the various woods used for these projects. And I did sand the surfaces flush to get the pins sanded down flush with the surface of the scale, because I want to have these be able to sit flat on my table as I contour the edge. And the first step will be to contour this edge, to sand this excess wood off till the wood meets the metal of the handle of the knife blade. I'm now ready to sand the edges of my scales to exactly meet with the metal on the blade. And one of the reasons I had sanded these surfaces flush to get the pins flush is so I could set this flat on this table, because this table is perfectly perpendicular to the belt, and so I'll get nice straight sides when I sand this. So I'm ready to start sanding. What I like about this belt sander is that it's speed adjustable, so I can run it at a slower speed so it doesn't burn the wood, it just cuts wood. A lot of times on the disc sander, it's just too fast at a speed and it actually starts to burn the wood. You got to be very careful, but by running at lower speed you can eliminate that problem. I'll be using a variety of belt grits from 60 down to 220 to sand off the excess wood on the knife handle scales. I want to sand down the scales to just be flush with the metal of the knife blade handle, and then I'll polish the metal handle with the finest grit sandpaper. Okay, that's pretty much done. Here you see the 15 layers of wood. So the next step will be contouring this, to fit a better hand shape. Okay, these are my 9 laminated wood knife handles for these bread knives, and each handle is different. Starting off with this first one, which has 17 layers of wood. And again, when that's contoured, those layers will come up and down and give a different pattern. The second one's a different pattern with 13 layers of laminated wood. And this is another pattern with 15 layers of laminated wood. Next we have our olive wood with 3 layers of wangi, maple, and wangi against the blade of the knife. This is my angled laminated board with no liner. The angled boards go right to the blade of the knife. This is similar, except I have a liner in addition to the angled laminated boards. This is my paduk, again with a liner. Actually three liners against the blade. This is some zebra wood, and there's again 3 liners there, maple, wangi, and maple. Another tiger wood with different liners, and this is maple, red heart, and maple. So these 9 knives now are ready to start contouring, and they'll all look quite different when they're contoured. I'm ready to start contouring my handles, and once again I'm using this Guinevere flexible finisher for doing the contouring. I bought this several years ago when I was doing Intarsia. It was a nice system for doing that, but it's great for doing this also. I have a number of different sanding discs of different diameters depending on what I'm doing, because I need a smaller one to get inside here, but a bigger one is good for just a general contouring. So let me go and get started and kind of do this freehand. What I do as I'm cutting this though, as I'm sanding one side, I'm also sanding the other side, and I try and match it up that the patterns match up on both sides of the blade. So if I take so much off this side, I want to take the same amount off this side. And what I'm typically doing is contouring in here and here, where your hand goes around, and an area for your thumb here, contoured in, with the fatter portion being in the center, and a fatter portion on the ball end also. Notice as I'm sanding the corners of the knife blade handle, the lower layers of wood begin to appear on the top surface of the scales. As I continue to contour the scales, unique patterns of the layers of the wood will be generated on the knife handle scales. Here I'm sanding the contours for the thumb and the pinky finger of your hand. It's pretty much done except some final hand sanding to clean it up a few areas, smooth it out, round off some of these rough edges. But it's almost done. Here I'm contour sanding the angled layer knife handles, and then I'll finish contour sanding all the remaining knife handles. These are my 9 knife blades after contour sanding. Now I need to do a lot of hand sanding to clean them up, smooth them out. And what I did this first one already. This is the Paduk handle. And what I did on this is I took the tape off above the handle, and then I contoured it to get it going perfectly in, and then I hand sanded this starting with 220 grit going down to 600 grit, and then I polished it. So this is pretty much done now, ready to go. This is a new tool I picked up at one of the later trade shows. It's a grinder. Works much like a Dremel tool, but it's much smaller, higher speed. It's actually probably a cross between a Dremel tool and a dentist tool. And you can see I got some very small bits on here, and this enables me to clean up areas of the knife handle, such as right down here where the wood meets the metal. Real fine precision tool, does a real nice job cleaning up. So I'm using a fine burr tool on here now, which is doing a nice job cleaning up the area next to the blade with each of the handle. So I'm running this right now at around 30,000 RPM, and you hear how quiet that is. That's really quiet, especially compared to a Dremel tool. And you can see there's a lot of epoxy and some of the tape's still on here, and the wood has to go down to the blade, so I'll be grinding all of that off. there you can see how nice that cleaned it up. This side I just cleaned, and the other side which I didn't do. I'm just using one of these micro mesh polishing boards to clean up the brass pin. Get this marks out of it and make it nice and flat and smooth. So I'm starting with the coarsest grit, and I'll be working down to the finer grits. Starting here with some 320 grit sandpaper. These 9 knife blade handles are finished sanding. I sanded these starting with 220 grit sandpaper and sanded all the way down to 600 grit. I then used a buffing wheel, some buffing compound, to polish the metal hub on the blade. So these are now ready to finish. I'll give these 1 or 2 coats of bush oil, let that dry overnight, and then I'll give these probably 5 coats of white bond polyurethane. I'm using this bush oil as an initial sealing of the wood. It seals the wood and also brings out the color, makes it a little more vibrant. This is just a jig to hold it while it's drying. You see how it brings out the color. I'll let those dry overnight. This completes the video on these 9 bread knives. I created 9 unique handles for each of these bread knives, and I gave them about 2 coats of bush oil, followed by 9 coats of polyurethane, and then I polished them on a buffing wheel with a fine buffing compound. So that completes these 9 bread knives. Shown here are the rotations and close-ups of each of the 9 knife handles. In the description of this video, we briefly describe the contents of this video. I also list the YouTube videos describing the production of the laminate boards and the other Accu-Slice knife handle videos. I also list the manufacturers and sources for both the knife blade blanks and also for the RAM micro motor tool. Again, thank you for watching this video. If you have any further questions, please give us a call or drop us an email. Our email and phone number are listed at the end of this video.